What is up, viewer out there watching this video? Lerox back here, and we're talking about another prospect that I would like to have from the upcoming 2018 NHL Entry Draft. Today, we're going to be talking about Dominik Bokk. And a lot of you guys who are keeping up with the series are probably saying things like, what? Dominik Bokk? What do you mean Dominik Bokk? You said that you're talking about prospects that would be available within the range that the Vancouver Canucks will probably be picking, assuming they don't win a lottery. And if you go by that, that means you're talking about guys in the 6 to 9 range, right? Why are you talking about Bokk? Well, hold your horses. So, let's talk a little bit about Dominik Bokk as a player, what kind of player he is, and why I personally would like to see him in a Canucks jersey. And mind you, it's not necessarily because I think he's a good player. But talking about Dominik Bokk, starting things off with his statistics, he spent the majority of his year playing for the Växjö Lakers under-20 team, which means that he was playing over there in the Super Elite. He grabbed himself 41 points in 35 games played. He played one game for the Växjö Lakers Junior 18 team. He got himself 2 goals in the one game he played there. So they thought, okay, you're pretty good, let's move you up to the Junior 20 League. And that's where he got 41 points in 35 games played. He was so good, in fact, that for a brief stint of time, the Växjö Lakers said, okay, you're doing really well in the Junior 20 leagues, let's bring you up to the actual team. And for 15 games playing in a really limited fourth-line role, mind you, Dominik Bokk got 2 points in 15 played games for the Växjö Lakers in the SHL. This was the full-time Lakers team. Guys like Elias Pettersson, Victor Faust, Robert Rosén. He was accompanying all these guys on a fourth-line role, and he was able to stand his ground. Granted, he didn't get that much playing time, but it was because he was in a limited role. So going back and forth between things, spending the majority of his time with the Junior 20 team, Dominik Bokk has posted a very good set of numbers playing in the Junior 20 league. Alright, he got 14 goals, 27 assists, so what? What kind of a player is he? Well, there's been a lot of scouting reports online that talk about him, and there are some guys who like him a little bit more than others. We'll get to that, by the way. But if I look at LastWordOnHockey.com's article talking about Dominik Bokk, they describe him as a raw player. A player who has just a good set of talent within him already built inside. And he's a player that would be valued not because of the things that he's built upon as he's grown up as a hockey player, but the things that he's had instinctually. His raw talent is described here as the best aspect of his game. And they talk about how he needs to work on his defensive game because when you're in the Junior 20 League dominating the game like he has, you're not really spending that much time in the defensive zone anyway, so there isn't really an opportunity to grow that. But at the same time, when it comes to his skating, his shot, his quick handles and everything, they described it here as him being able to stick handle like he's in a phone booth. And that's a very interesting simile to make, and I ultimately feel like that gets the message across tenfold. Because Dominik Bokk, when he plays, he's got an edge in his skating. He's not necessarily the fastest guy, but he's a guy who can accelerate quickly and pounce on the puck. He's like a predator out there. He sees the puck, he grabs it. He's able to grab it, stick handle through a few guys, and his shot, very accurate, very powerful, is able to drive his offensive game as well. But that being said, though, his achievements this season, aside from the Junior 20 League, hasn't really been that impressive, considering that he hasn't been getting that much playing time playing for the Växjö Lakers in the full-time SHL. And because he spent the majority of his time this season dominating the Junior 20 Leagues as a recently turned 18-year-old, he's being put in very interesting positions for all the draft rankings. HockeyProspect.com has him listed as 21st. Future Considerations has him as 46th, Jeff Merrick has him at 28th, some guys have him going in the early 20s, some in the late 20s, some guys having him dropping to the 2nd round, and being taken with the 32nd overall pick. Cam Robinson from Dobber Prospects has Bokk at 15th, so that's a much bigger increase than what we're used to. But Corey Pronman of The Athletic, who's been criticized in the past before for his prospect rankings, he has Dominik Bokk as 8th. And he wrote a few articles about it. You can read those up if you want to, about Dominik Bokk and why he believes Bokk is an elite talent. And this is the ultimate fuel that he has in terms of ranking Bokk right behind Oliver Wahlstrom. Mind you, there are a little bit of controversies with Corey Pronman and his rankings himself. He's got Brady Tkachuk down there at 15th and Evan Bouchard at 26th. If I had to take a guess, these wouldn't necessarily be prospect rankings in terms of where they're going to go, but my assumption is Corey Pronman is ranking these prospects in regards to how well he thinks they're going to play in their primes, which is a totally fair argument. Craig Button does the same thing, I'm fairly sure, and Dominik Bokk is listed as 8th overall, in front of guys like Joe Veleno, Ty Smith, Farabee, Tkachuk, Evan Bouchard. And it's interesting to see where he's going to go. But ultimately, if we had to guess, he's probably going to go in the mid to late 20s, maybe an early second round pick will be where he goes. He might be like a Cole Lind in that situation. But the reason why I want Dominik Bokk on the Vancouver Canucks is because if he does end up with the Canucks, this will mean one of two things. Either A, he dropped down to the second round and the Canucks would be able to snatch him up with their second round pick, which would be great, by the way, because it would be the same story as Cole Lind. It's either that happens, or us getting Dominik Bokk means that we made a trade. Because if Dominik Bokk goes in the first round, and he goes to the Vancouver Canucks, that means that the Vancouver Canucks made a trade with a playoff team to grab a first-round pick in the 20s somewhere. And that basically means that the Vancouver Canucks would be forced to put themselves in a position where they did things with their assets. If we have Dominik Bokk, it means either he slid down, okay, that's great, or we made a trade. And I really want trades to happen. Who knows what's going to get moved? Chris Tanev, Ben Hutton, any one of these guys. You can also see guys like Sven Baertschi potentially getting moved. Any one of these players that we got, if we move any of these guys and we get a first-round pick in return and we grab anybody in the late first round, that in itself to me is a success. And Dominik Bokk is a player who I've had my eye on for quite a while because, you know, I've been keeping up with the Växjö Lakers because of Elias Pettersson and all that, but that's another aspect to it too. I mean, Dominik Bokk playing with Pettersson, of course, why would we not want to reunite that? That would be amazing. And considering the fact that Dominik Bokk is probably going to play in the SHL next season if he's ready to make that step from Junior 20 up into the SHL, he'll develop in the same route that Elias Pettersson did, and who knows, he might have the same success, he might not, it really depends. But at the same time, Dominik Bokk has been described by a few to be the next Draisaitl. And I say Draisaitl because he's going through the exact same path that Draisaitl has went through, just on different hockey teams. Because Draisaitl, we all know he went over to the Kelowna Rockets, and he dominated over there. Dominik Bokk, instead of taking that route, going through the German hockey teams, he moved over to Sweden, and he started doing things over there. So, I think a lot of the inexposure to Dominik Bokk is why he's ranked kinda low, and why some guys who have actually seen him play rank him so highly. We talked about Joe Veleno being a guy who we don't know where he's gonna go. Some guys have him as a top 5 pick, some guys have him as a top 20. Dominik Bokk might be even more diverse in that aspect, because he could drop to the second round. And I firmly believe that if he did drop and the Canucks were in a position to pick him, I think they would. Because we've seen the Canucks trying to build up chemistry with guys we've had before. Elias Pettersson, Jonathan Dahlin, both of these guys played together in the Allsvenskan for Timrå, and now they're together. It would be interesting to see if we get Bokk in on this as well, if we're able to snag him up in the second round. And ultimately, Bokk, although a player who needs to work on his defensive game, you've heard the story before, he's a player who probably would be able to do that, to be honest, because considering the success he's had in the Junior 20 League and the way he's trending upwards in terms of building upon what he has, he's in a position to definitely grow into a forward that's capable of playing in the NHL. And speaking of this 6'1", 179-pound body who's already built and plays on either wing, things look really good for Dominik Bokk going forward, and who knows, if Corey Pronman is 100% correct, then Dominik Bokk will become an elite player and he will dominate the NHL just like he's dominated the Junior 20 leagues, because his article, I mean, it's talking about it. Dominik Bokk is worth a high draft pick. He's a dangler, he's got elite talent, and he is the 8th best prospect in this draft. So, I mean, there are some people who like him a little bit more, but Corey Pronman, he's on a different level. But at the same time, it's because Corey Pronman actually watches him. A lot of us over here in North America don't really get the chance to watch him that much, but doesn't mean he's a bad player. And I, for one, would be very welcoming if we were able to grab Dominik Bokk. And overall, that's it. That is why I want Dominik Bokk on the Vancouver Canucks. Hope you guys enjoyed this video for Plus and Controls like that for gaming, and bye.